Good morning. Thought I would get something up here early, and I might add some things throughout the day. But I just thought we could do a little reflection on some of the readings, which I'm going to presume that you're aware of by now. So, as you know, in the third, fourth, and fifth Sundays of Lent, during the A readings, the A cycle, we have readings that are intended for the Gospels and specifically intended for the remote preparation of baptism at the Easter Vigil. So we have the woman at the well, which we heard last week, today the man born blind, and then next week the raising of Lazarus. But let's just kind of look at the some elements of the woman at the well and the man born blind today. Now, when you get to Jerusalem, and as you head basically south from there, it's very, very, very arid, especially south of Jerusalem when you get into the Negev desert. But water is a very important part of the life of the people, especially when it comes to ritual purity. Both the Jewish faith and the Muslim faith, the purifying oneself before worship is really crucial. And how do you do that when there's no water or there's very little water? Well, there were a couple public areas where people could go to ritually purify themselves, and one of them was Siloam, which is mentioned in today's gospel story. And the pool of Siloam is south of the old city, and interestingly enough, it's in the part of the city that's called the City of David, which is where when David, after he was king and overtook Jerusalem was not part of Judah or Israel. It was independent. It was one of the only places when they came to settle that they were unable to take. And David was able to take Jerusalem from the Jebusites, and he turned it into his capital when they unified the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom under his rule. And so in the City of David is where this pool of Siloam is. And they did find this in the recent years and have excavated it and restored its dimensions. And it's a significant sized pool. It's not Olympic or anything like that, but it's a pretty good sized pool. And so when Jesus encounters this man born blind, and remember one of the issues here is that an individual would be considered sinful if they were blind, that somehow some sin that he had incurred caused the blindness. But if he was born blind, what does that mean? It couldn't have been his sin, so it must have been his parents' sin. And Jesus will have nothing to do with that. And so he provides a cure for him. He makes some clay from his own spittle and places it in the man's eyes, and then tells him to go wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So what we're seeing here is this man born blind is going to become like the woman at the well, and a disciple and an apostle almost immediately, to go from following Jesus to proclaiming Jesus in a very short period of time. And as his sight is regained, he also has better insight into who Jesus is. He goes from calling him a prophet to the Son of God in a very short period of time. And of course, for all this, he gets tossed out of the synagogue for his, just telling his truth. And the Jewish leadership wants nothing to do with it. They are unable to see Jesus for who he is and unwilling to. So, just like the woman at the well, she encounters Jesus. She hears her own truth through Jesus, and she accepts it, and goes back to her village and proclaims Jesus. and converts, for lack of a better word, many people in this Samaritan town as they encounter Jesus for themselves. So perhaps this morning, as we continue on our pilgrim way, even though it's been disrupted, that we may have the opportunity in some of this quiet to get a better look at who Jesus is for us in this time. Just a word about social distancing. I've been thinking about this pretty much all week. The story of that, I think it's in Luke's gospel, where Jesus encounters several lepers outside of town, which is of course where they're supposed to be because they are quarantined. They've been evicted from the community because of their skin condition. And for the 500th time, say it with me, this is not Hansen's disease. It's more like psoriasis or eczema that these individuals have, but it's still in first century Palestine, it's not, they're not sure of its contagious aspects, and so people are quarantined. And of course, it's not by choice. And that's kind of what I think about as I'm, here in the nation, maybe rightfully so, starting these stay-at-home proclamations. And obviously, that's something we don't want because we're social people, and we want to interact, and we want to be with each other. So not by our own choice are we asked to stay at home. And perhaps that will give us a little insight into how these people felt, and especially how they felt after Jesus cures this group of people. Now, I don't blame the individuals that didn't go back to give Jesus thanks. It was just the Samaritan individual with the leprosy that came back to thank Jesus. The others, I'm going to presume, after they were given the green light from the priest that they could return home, is exactly what they did with great joy because they got to see their family, their loved ones again. But the Samaritan thought enough first to thank Jesus before he went back. And so maybe as we celebrate in our own way today, that we can find a way to thank Jesus for the continued healing that he brings us and ask him to continue to protect us in this time.